Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar from Lenovo and AMD, titled Work Anywhere and Render Anything. Looking forward to an exciting, lively conversation with everybody today. Let's get started. So I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mike Leach. I am a senior manager within Lenovo's worldwide workstation group, and I head up our horizontal team of workstation solution specialists.
And I'm Andy Parma, and I work for AMD and had the pleasure of working with Lenovo team for the design, marketing, and sale of workstations using AMD processors. Again, thanks for joining us today. We'll go ahead and take questions at the end of today's session. So go ahead and as we're presenting, go and enter them in the chat. And then when we get to the conclusion, we will address those items that are in the chat window.
Perfect. Thanks, Andy. And a quick note for those that had registered, please stick around to the end. We're actually giving away an opportunity or chance to win a high-powered Lenovo mobile workstation or one of our portable USB-C Lenovo Go laptop power banks. So stick around to the end, jump into the Q&A, and you'll have your chance to win one of these epic prizes. So I'll kick off with user personas. And what we've seen across the industry is this new kind of power persona. The evolution of the modern workplace, the roles, the responsibilities, the job scope of many of us has changed and is continuing to change and evolve at a rapid pace. And we're kind of seeing now that the typical user personas many organizations have to cater for, they're vastly inaccurate. You know, they're not built for the new normal or where business will likely go. And that's fueled and also not fueled by the wonders that are artificial intelligence. But to quote a Marvel movie, kind of with great power becomes kind of great responsibility. And what we're looking for is that as you have more of these kind of superhuman employees within your organization, you need to make sure that you cater for them responsibly, making sure that you're getting the most out of them. So with this new type of user persona, you know, organizations need to rethink their strategy of maybe when or how when it comes to deploying what would be classed as kind of standard IT devices. You know, looking at this chart here, this 9-box square as we commonly refer it to, but ultimately employees are more expensive. It's just a fact of life. However, you know, if you employ the best talent, and obviously everybody wants to employ great talent, you know, you want and you kind of need to get the best out of them. If they're sat there idling, you know, time is money. And this is true for anybody in your organization, no matter where they are in the leadership or pay scale. And the dreaded hourglass document loading times, you know, ultimately they waste time and they cost you and your organization money. Data, we're finding now data, it's the new currency of business. In the era of artificial intelligence, you know, this statement has never been more true. We're creating and actually collecting more data from more sources than we've ever seen before. And ultimately, the goal of being able to digest and successfully gain insight from this data deluge, you know, ultimately back to the time is money, you know, obtaining valuable insight maybe into last night's lottery numbers is not a great way to be productive today after the fact. So for us as an example, it's all about putting that currency so it's easily spendable and digestible within an organization. And then when you start looking at things like productivity, you know, contrary to widespread belief, you know, not all employees are sort of lazy by nature. I mean, you can probably, there's an element of truth in there for some organizations, but I would say, like, if you can remove the weight from the way and the day that they typically work, so a workstation versus kind of a wait station, what we've seen ultimately trying to bring productivity, I mean, it can be a drug, it can be addictive. If you can make sure that people are productive, you know, ultimately then are productive in a way that they get more out of their day job, then, you know, you save time, you save money, and it flows well into kind of a better work-life balance. You know, if you've got employees, you can get more done in less time or at a higher quality, then this ultimately delivers a better work-life balance. You know, HR get a smile on their face. And in the world where kind of work, it becomes, you know, in organizational standards where people are having more of maybe a hybrid working environment, work becomes what you do, not where you go. Delivering workforce agility isn't always straightforward, but it can be the key to a happy workforce, a more productive or a more positive outcome for your business. And then if we look at this trend then through, revenue streams, ultimately, all employees are in some way, shape, or form, they're placed to actively drive our business's next revenue streams. So clearing that path, what we see kind of like, delivering a recipe for faster time to revenue should ultimately be an organization's end goal. So we're asking customers and organizations to say, look, let's work smarter, not harder with the tools that you have today. And putting in place smarter technology for all your users, no matter where they kind of fit in the food chain, can help tap into all of the above, all of these 9 items, making end users more productive, happy, and profitable for your business. And when we start looking at security, I deliberately put this last, although organizations need to put this first. Security should never be working in kind of polar opposites to any of the other 8. And it should operate as a foundational pillar that enhances your business, not the opposite. But when you start looking at giving people agility, work-life balance, productivity, access to more data, working smarter, then sometimes security can accidentally take a back step. And we need to make sure that organizations look at this, as overall. And if we kind of see that, almost gamifying it a little bit, playing the IT manager game, which 3 of these squares can you achieve? And more depressingly, which 3 or 6 do you have to maybe deprioritize in order to stay on budget? Fun or not fun game of how do you manage that and ultimately get all 9, take every possible one. So we're here today to kind of help you better understand the landscape, the end user landscape, the IT, the new standard of landscape when it comes to IT technology, and maybe help educate you a little bit on how and where implementing smarter technology from Lenovo and AMD can actually help you achieve more of your goals. These goals aren't always attainable within a short space of time, and we want to show you how putting this smarter technology for all can hopefully help change that. So looking here, the modern enterprise software stack and the roles that these apps will play in the modern workflow. And I'll say the modern workflow kind of in inverted commas, because that might be different for everybody, depending on what industry you operate in, maybe what country or what geographic region of the world that you're in. But ultimately, to simplify things, the logos here on this screen, they should not be a surprise to anybody. Many of us spend, let's be honest, far too many hours in front of these on a daily basis. These become common tools that we use for the basic functionalities of our roles across the business. And what's commonly kind of misconceived is the fact that these are not just standard like Office apps. Essentially lightweight email, word processing, maybe spreadsheets. This isn't the year 2000. The logos on this chart, in theory, in the year 2000 were exactly the same, slightly older versions of the logos, but the logos from the same vendors were kind of still there. And to be super depressing, that was a quarter of a century ago. And the truth is that these applications, although having the same kind of fundamental roles within our day-to-day Word documents, spreadsheets, email, they have changed massively and they've increased in their compute complexity. And therefore, we have to look at their compute demands significantly differently. Now, looking here, this results in a significantly different, like minimum hardware requirements. The standard user personas, you might put people into 3 or 4 buckets, a standard, a high end, maybe a C-suite type exec. You give them 8, 16, 32 gigs of memory. The idea here is that you need to look at things differently based on how these modern apps both integrate within themselves and integrate within the hardware that's available. And the screenshot here was actually taken from my own device. And this showed just as a basic Office, web browser, PowerPoint. It's engulfing memory like you wouldn't believe. I had very minimal things open. I wasn't running a webinar. I wasn't having Teams and PowerPoint and Excel. I wasn't doing, data analytics with Power BI. I wasn't running Copilot. I just had the basic fundamentals, 9:05 on a Monday morning, and I'm already consuming more than half the memory that, IT have given me on a device. But what we wanted to kind of look at is that the requirements, therefore, inside your system have changed significantly. And for those of you that maybe looking to refresh laptops or devices that were possibly maybe panic purchased as part of the pandemic, there was a report published by Lakeside Software back in 2020, 5 years ago, that highlighted that over 99% of common kind of productivity apps like Office, video processing calls, that sort of thing, they can now utilize and actually benefit from the GPU. Put this in context of we're all almost real-time live broadcasters. On a day-to-day basis, we're running high-resolution webcams with video conferencing, with noise cancellation and background blur and video filters to make us look pretty. We're running higher fidelity content and video within PowerPoint presentations. We're running data spreadsheets now that are, gigabytes and gigabytes in size, but we're still classed as kind of like standard Office users. So to put it in kind of context, the actual compute requirements here have changed. The software is now more advanced, and therefore this is where the birth of this kind of superhuman user persona, this power persona, has kind of come from. So, and this is before we actually get to discussing what you'll see on the chart here is the NPU, a new type of compute processor. It's called the Neural Processing Unit. It's part of this AI PC movement that we've seen spawn from Microsoft and many of the silicon partners. But this is a new type of compute processor that sits alongside the CPU, and it's been developed to deliver greater efficiency with sustained AI-enabled workloads. You see, I mentioned AI there, but say the NPU is not an accelerator, but it's more an efficient AI-capable co-processor that's been designed for lightweight, sustained AI workloads that allow you to maintain efficiency and ultimately great battery life. Now, we've added in the GPU here. So paired with modern GPUs, they are a new, powerful, heterogeneous compute architecture, and one that typically will now ignite a new era of personal computing. So within this modern software stack, whether you're using Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Teams, Tableau, Power BI, maybe even some of the Microsoft Copilot enabled features, more and more of these are now both CPU intensive, memory, GPU, and then we'll now start and see more and more of these actually be able to offload many of their AI enabled features onto the neural processing, the NPU. So that's the standard kind of enterprise software stack. But there's a new type of role and an even new type of user persona, within organizations today. So data scientists can be both dedicated employees, but almost roles and skill sets within, normal business employees. So business and data analytics is now an even more important tool. Data is our new currency. So being able to fuel and use those employees in a better way. Everybody will now have some form of AI professional feature within a certain software tool. So whether you're talking now to dedicated AI practitioners or dedicated developers, CTOs, CISOs, CSOs, like these C-suite execs now have to understand and use more of these tools. And a lot of these AI features are actually driven now by a much broader open source software ecosystem. An example here, one of our close partners with Anaconda, they've got 45 million active users of their developer platform. And if you look at things like some of the communities out there for AI, for data science around Kaggle, they've got 22 million members. They don't just use Office-based productivity tools like the previous charts. They're heavily entrenched within Windows, with Linux. So they're not just a Windows user. Windows is for their day job, but for the additional tools and the additional workflow elements that they have to excel, they have to use Linux. So those employees become very influential within an organization, but obviously then they can become very competitive. They need to have the right hardware. They can become very expensive employees to be left idle. And we need to make sure, back to that security pillar on the early charts, is that these Linux power users working with AI, they need to be secure, they need to be competitive, and they need to be happy employees. With the birth now of kind of open source edge, Lenovo and ThinkPad, we're synonymous with the open source and the Linux community. We spend an awful lot of time every year working with all of the major Linux distribution partners to make sure that we have best-in-class, full-stack Linux hardware and software support across our entire workstation portfolio. So we work closely with AMD, specifically around their ROC-M library suite, but we offer in collaboration with AMD a full-stack AI hardware and software suite. It's an end-to-end ecosystem that allows people to develop their own tools, their own applications that can therefore be accelerated on their individual devices. So on-device AI, specifically on-device private and secure AI, can therefore be done very, very effectively. So very much living on the bleeding edge, utilizing cutting edge technology. And it allows organizations to then take that best-in-class hardware, take the best-in-class software and functionality, and actually deliver both cost, scalability, and feature functionality across a broad range of use cases within AI. So it runs within native Linux or within a Windows environment using the Microsoft WSL2 support. And what we're highlighting here is that users can still have an enterprise class laptop, a mobile workstation from Lenovo, powered by AMD, running the powerful Microsoft Windows 11 for Workstation operating system. But then you can still cater for those higher end, more bespoke users running Linux, but running those as virtual machines inside the WSL2 interface itself. So the best of both worlds. And it's that spearhead now of companies are now looking to bridge the gap between where they are today with common standard tools and where they want to go to tomorrow to maintain competitiveness. And for this, ultimately, it's a new outlook, and that's not a Microsoft outlook. That was genuinely an outlook for the future, looking for companies now to build where are they going to go and how are they going to get there. There ultimately needs to be a new compute architecture. So at this point, I want to pass over to Andy Parma to discuss the AMD Ryzen AI Pro processors and how they can be best suited and best developed then to support where your new outlook will take you.
Thanks, Mike. So as
AI is revolutionizing everything. We're breaking down what you need to know about AMD Ryzen AI PCs and how they transform the ways we live and work. With AI PCs, data can be localized on your own system, giving you access to powerful technologies like LLMs anytime, anywhere, and without connecting to the internet or overly taxing battery life or your CPU. With AMD Ryzen AI, you can access over 100 AI-driven experiences from some of the biggest software publishers. This means you can generate incredible imagery or create professional-looking presentations with only a few simple text prompts. You can also create document summaries, respond to emails, analyze data, generate code, or create and dramatically enhance graphics and video in minutes. It's all advanced by AMD Ryzen AI, which includes a neural processing unit. The NPU is your own dedicated AI engine, and it empowers you to unlock truly extraordinary AI experiences today. That's not the promise of AI PCs, it's the reality, and it's available right now. Make sure you're prepared for the AI evolution with Ryzen AI PCs from AMD. Learn more at amd.com/RyzenAI.
All right, thanks, Mike. So as the video kind of talked about, AMD's been working with a broad ecosystem of software developers to bring over 100 experiences for next-gen AI PCs. And again, some of those that we've talked about a lot between AMD and Lenovo and our partners are personal AI assistants, right? So doing things like information retrieval, document summarization. But for those of you that are in the creative community, again, there's a lot of content generation, multimedia production that is now also being accelerated by AI. Again, so this is working with artists and creators to accelerate their workflows. And again, one of the areas that we really always focus on, especially for power users, is how AI can accelerate and enhance privacy features with these threat and anomaly detection features. What we're able to do is offload a number of those security features and functions to that dedicated AI engine, freeing up all of the graphics resources and all of the compute resources in a Ryzen AI processor for your creative and productivity workflows. So on the next slide, for those of you that are more interested in the details of developing these new experiences, Mike talked some about some of the development frameworks that we've got with ROCm and other features, but we really have a continuum of technologies where some of the technologies are built into the Ryzen AI processors, those pro security, manageability, and reliability features, collaboration with software partners, as well as development frameworks, so that our users that are developing their own tools have those resources available. Or for those of you that would prefer to just use off-the-shelf enterprise AI experiences like those from Bufferzone or Zoom or Adobe, again, we've collaborated with over 100 ISV partners to deliver those AI accelerated experiences. But on the next slide, sometimes Mike and I still get asked, why do I need these high-performance workstations using the high-performance AMD processors? And the reality is that even as we continue to enhance and accelerate the capabilities of these workstations every generation, our customers are doing more and more demanding workflows. So within design and manufacturing, AMD and Lenovo are working with every major auto manufacturer on the planet, and as they are evaluating, do we stay with traditional drivetrains? Do we go with hybrid? Do we do it full electric? And how are those design processes going to be enabled? That development workflow is more complicated than it's ever been. Just a few years ago, most customers either had a single, drivetrain technology, traditional, diesel or fuel based powertrains, some that were only doing electric, and now most, if not all, major manufacturers have got multiple drivetrain options because of this explosion of variation and choice for their customers. Again, with media and entertainment, AMD and Lenovo have a long history of working with the most innovative companies in the visual effects industry. Winners of multiple Academy Awards for visual effects have done that work on AMD and Lenovo workstations. So again, as people are looking at higher performance within those traditional workstation workflows, and also looking at how does machine learning and AI integrate into those workflows, it's really driving a continued need for high performance workflows. And one of the things that we've done on the next slide, we talk about AMD's strategic relationships with a number of ISV partners. Again, this is not just working with these partners for ISV certification of ThinkPad workstations to make sure that these applications are going to run seamlessly, but this is also deep engineering relationships between Lenovo, AMD, and our software partners to optimize their software to take the best advantage of AMD architecture. So as we come out with new generations of cores or new pieces of technology like the NPU, aka the AI engine, working with these partners so that you get a seamless and highly productive solution for your workflows. So as we look on the next slide about how Lenovo has architected and engineered these new AMD processors into their portfolio, the ThinkPad P14S Gen 6, as well as the ThinkPad P16S Gen 4 AMD processors are the first mobile workstations using the AMD Ryzen AI Pro 300 series processors. And what these workstations bring to the market is up to 12 of our new high-performance Zen 5 cores, but we've also got a unified memory architecture that allows the GPU compute to use up to 96 gigabytes of system memory. So again, with a huge amount of system memory, as you start experimenting and more widely deploying large language models, this large amount of graphics memory enables LLMs to be run locally for more secure as well as more customized results. Again, we've got that dedicated NPU with up to 50 TOPS for Copilot Plus experiences. But the other thing that we really get as we collaborate with our partners for AI accelerated security features is that it frees up the CPU and GPU resources for your compute intensive workflows. And a lot of those security features and functions are now running on the NPU. On the next slide, we show how this is coming to bear with the architecture of these processors. What you see on the left, that is a representation of the amount of the processor that is now using these GPU and NPU resources. And again, almost half of the compute area of the AMD Ryzen AI Pro 300 series processor is for those accelerated workflows, again, with a huge GPU and a huge NPU complementing the CPU, taking up almost the same amount of compute resources in the processor. The other thing that we've done really uniquely on the next slide is the way that we have worked with Microsoft and our software partners for the unified memory architecture. When you look at a traditional architecture on the left, it's got a discrete graphics card with dedicated graphics memory. Any workflow that is being done on the GPU needs to be offloaded across the PCI Express bus. What AMD has done with our new unified memory architecture is the CPU, the GPU, and that AI engine are now sharing that unified memory. So again, up to 96 gigabytes of unified memory. The GPU can be using up to 48 gigabytes of that unified memory. So for applications like rendering, for applications like LLMs, where the GPU really benefits from a massive amount of memory, you now have more graphics memory than's ever been available in a mobile processor before, really maximizing the compute capabilities of all three of those compute engines, the CPU, the NPU, and the GPU. On the next slide, I will really talk about some of the advantages for AI enhanced productivity. So again, in collaboration with Microsoft for Copilot Plus, these two workstations that we've been talking about, the ThinkPad P14S AMD, as well as the P16S AMD, were the first mobile workstations available with support for Copilot Plus experiences. Again, working with generative AI and LLMs, the large amount of graphics memory will accelerate those workflows to a place where they've never been able to go on a mobile workstation before. And then again, as we continue to collaborate with partners for productivity enhancements, as well as security enhancements, you'll take advantage of over 100 ISV experiences that are being developed by our partners. On the next slide, really one of the benefits for workstation users from the tight collaboration that we have with this ISV community is that we're seeing more and more professional workstation software be able to take advantage of DirectX ray tracing as well as GPU compute. Again, working with partners like PTC and Maxon and Altair and Autodesk and Adobe, they've put a number of accelerations in their software to take advantage of those compute engines in the most efficient way. And so as we kind of pull that all together on the next slide, talked again a lot about the three compute engines that are in every AMD Ryzen AI processor. I talked about working with partners for those software experiences, but we're able to deliver up to 43% faster performance than competing solutions. And again, these are for a number of both workstation as well as power user workflow. So when we look at multi-threaded performance, we're up to 16% higher performance than the competition. When we look at pass mark performance for enterprise power users, up to 17% higher performance. And then again, when you look at workstation workflows, whether you're looking at life sciences workflows or media and entertainment or financial services workflows, again, dramatically higher performance with the ThinkPad P14S Gen 6 AMD than with competing solutions. So again, on the final slide before I hand things back to Mike, and the Ryzen AI Pro 300 series processors, they've been developed to deliver leadership performance, again, not just on traditional workstation workflows, but also for those power users that Mike talked about in his statements, folks that are, using Power BI every day, using Tableau, using other, massive Excel pivot tables to analyze data. You get a higher performance for those enterprise power user workflows with the Ryzen AI Pro 300 series processors. Again, we've got powerful ISV certified graphics, so you'll get the support as well as those feature enhancements from 20 ISV partners with that dedicated NPU and all of the security, manageability, and reliability features you expect out of a ThinkPad P professional workstation. So I'm going to pass things back to Mike to take us through the final section of today's session.
No, I appreciate it, Andy, and thank you, everybody. Apologies for the audio mess ups that was solely on me. You've raised a good point there, Andy. I think, look, software pushes hardware, which therefore pushes software, and organizations are kind of sometimes stuck in the middle of, they're either on the latest generation of software, but maybe they're waiting for a hardware refresh, or they're about to do a hardware refresh, but they may be unsure when to press the button because they know new software is coming. And what we're seeing now, we're kind of the velocity of AI-enabled features that are coming across an entire suite of applications is just astonishing. And I think it's kind of penny wise, pound foolish for those to kind of sit still, knowing that the market is just moving at such a tremendous pace. So be it Microsoft with Copilot Plus, be it Adobe with some of their enabled features, Tableau and Microsoft from Power BI and the other tools. The fact of the matter is that AI is or will soon be embedded into every major software application that you typically will touch on a daily basis. Now, that's both a scary thought for those IT decision makers that have to somehow police that, but also, how do you factor in or plan for the unknown, knowing that this isn't a traditional IT refresh. It's not a traditional landscape. If we go back to 2018 or 2020, when major organizations did their last huge refreshes, the world was a completely different place. And what we've tried to do here is utilize best of breed hardware architecture from AMD, packaged and then delivered through Lenovo and obviously our enterprise grade ThinkPad portfolio. But it's that suite of software that wraps around it where you can build your own tools and apps today to get you the very domain specific tasks that you need. Or you can take off the shelf tools from Microsoft, from Adobe, and typically utilize their AI features enabled today. But it's not an or statement, it's an and statement. These devices, the on-device AI, it's faster. There's no latency. There's no cost to the cloud. You can run it privately. It's secure. And the fact now that AI, it's not an individual workflow. Newsflash, but AI is nothing new. It is just another compute workload. But it's a compute workload that can be very performance intensive or require lots of performance to therefore be usable. And that's exactly what AMD does with their heterogeneous Ryzen AI architecture, is deliver that end-to-end. Best hardware, best software support for commercial off-the-shelf, the plugins, and then the best open source frameworks for you to then build your own. So if you need to look at building or crafting your own company-specific AI tools, maybe domain-specific for certain jobs or functions, you can do so. And this whole platform is supported and built end-to-end to deliver maximum performance, maximum productivity, making sure that it's productive and therefore private at the same time. So what we've got, I mean, these are just a couple of slides to cover off on some of the portfolio side. But if you missed it earlier in the year, we were the world's first partners to deliver Ryzen AI 300 series platforms in a mobile workstation. So this is our wonderful ThinkPad P16S Gen 6. It is our lightest ever mobile workstation. I mean, it's just under 1.4 kilos or 3 pounds for those working in Imperial. It is a very small, very thin, and very light device. If you think of a mobile workstation, if you've used mobile workstations in the past, these typically are the heavier side of a laptop device. They're never wafer thin. They never have all-day battery life because they were built as almost desktop replacements. And some of those types of platforms can exist today, but the P14S is wafer thin, feather light, and it is our lightest ever ThinkPad P series. So ThinkPad, trusted, the world's #1 enterprise laptop device. P series is the performance variant of that. We have other variant classes from L and T and X series for different types of user personas, but the P series is by far the highest performing platforms that we have. So the P14S, clues in the name, it is a 14-inch device. We have a 2.8K beautiful 100% DCI-P3 color accurate OLED display. We support up to the Ryzen AI 9, their H-class and the HX class CPUs with the integrated Radeon graphics and that all-important Ryzen AI NPU, that neural processor. The platform can actually support up to a whopping 96 gigabytes of system memory. It has built-in AMD Pro manageability for those that need to obviously deploy large volumes and large scales of these. You can manage them all from a single pane of glass using the AMD Pro manageability suite. We include, it's a Think platform, so everything from us includes the Think Shield security suite. So for us, you can know that this is just as secure as it is reliable. And with our 57 watt-hour battery, this one platform can deliver over 13 hours of battery life. There are larger battery options available, but I wanted to highlight in such a thin and light 14-inch device, getting you, close to, 2 working days of battery life. Those that work a 7.5, 8-hour day, realistically, I mean, this is something which wouldn't normally be associated with a mobile workstation. So when you start looking at things like 77% faster multi-threaded performance, and a lot of applications, thanks to the work that AMD are doing, is now tapping into this multi-core, this heterogeneous architecture much better. We're delivering 25% better productivity. So back to the benchmarking slides that Andy showed, just a 14-inch thin and light client device. It is a workstation. It's been built, it's been engineered from the ground up to support everything from data analysts, data scientists, and architects, all the way through to this new power persona that we see across enterprise organizations today. And then moving up a screen size, this is its bigger brother. This is the P16S. It's a 15% larger display, a little bit larger due to the bigger screen. We have got an increased screen to body ratio. Weight increases just north of 1.7 kilos. But this is a beautiful, again, OLED display, 16-inch, same CPU, same memory, same NPU characteristics. But because we had the larger chassis design, we've actually implemented the all-important numeric keypad for those that like to be productive with numbers, and a 65% larger battery at 86 watt hours. Now, this is a Lenovo exclusive. We're the only people to have this Ryzen Pro 300 in a 16-inch chassis. This is a very powerful, again, slightly larger, but it is, the ultimate platform. And what we've seen, taking these new technologies and kind of switching them into what we would class as traditional workflows. I mean, not everybody is computer-aided design, but a lot of the tools and techniques and software features within things like SolidWorks are actually now falling into mainstream software applications. So AMD have featured something called Radeon Pro Renderer, which is an AI-enhanced renderer within this application. hardware-based ray trace rendering. You can start and navigate and move complex 3D models around the screen much faster. So put this in context of, I just used PowerPoint. You can now work off high resolution graphics. You can now start and use some of the AI design features. And the fact that they're accelerated and offloaded locally ultimately delivers faster time to revenue, time to market, and therefore, return on investment. Back to my very first slide, employees are expensive. So by making them faster and more productive, you're ultimately saving time, which therefore should ultimately deliver, more positive digits to your bottom line. And then switching gears onto 3D visualization, Andy, you covered it off beautifully with the work you're doing with Adobe and Blender, but these high resolution displays, the beautiful OLED color accurate displays that you see across mobile workstations and specifically the P14S and 16S, that's more pixels. No one told me that, well, actually now I'm asking the graphics card to display 8 times as many pixels as I did on my COVID purchased laptop. So all of a sudden, those beautiful pictures, they don't display themselves. They need more horsepower to display. So working on more polygons, working off high resolution content, you therefore need to factor in that navigating those beautiful PowerPoint slides that you're working on at 4K or 2.5K resolution takes more graphical processing power. So it's important then to use dedicated GPUs, the Radeon Pro options, the dedicated memory up to 48 gigabytes. For those of us that are doing maybe a Teams webinar today or Zoom or, video conferencing calls, we're talking virtual production studios. We just don't realize it. So working with, faster video, better quality audio, all of those wonderful filters and background blurs that we see, it is more demanding, but we don't see it as a standard user, but we're using 3D visualization techniques that have been catered for in the professional market, and they just bleed over into sort of the corporate norm today. So all of this, you've hopefully understood the positioning around, enterprise apps are just more demanding. AI is demanding, compute intensive. It's the known and the unknown, and how do you factor in for that? You've heard from Andy on the Ryzen processors and how they've built and engineered from the ground up a new efficient processing platform for this exact era to support you today and into the future. And hopefully you've heard from Lenovo on how we've packaged that within our amazing ThinkPad P14S and 16S platforms that are a form factor that everybody should crave. And I guess you might be thinking, well, Mike, Andy, what's the catch? Sounds great on paper. What's it going to cost me? And what we're trying to highlight is, mobile workstations are a performance platform. And I wanted to put this slide up on the screen that's highlighted the work that Lenovo has across our device as a service platform. So there's a QR code on that coffee cup, and I'd ask everybody on the chart, on the call, to kind of do 2 things. One of them is load up Task Manager and just tick on the Performance tab on the left-hand side and just monitor how much of the applications you're running today are stealing or robbing from CPU, memory, and graphics. And just entertain yourself with just maybe how complex your workflow today actually is. Simulate that across Monday morning, Friday afternoon. You should be able to pin Task Manager to one side and you can see it go up and down with the relevant applications that you have running. And then load up that QR code. It'll take you to our on-device calculator for Lenovo Device as a Service. And I wanted to highlight something in here that we will build a custom report for you based on your environment. But I went to Lenovo.com. I took a standard priced P14S. This price was calculated sometime last week, I believe. And I equipped an employee with 100 devices. I picked a $1,000 per device cost, just to keep round numbers. And then we put that over a 36-month refresh cycle using standard repair and IT salary costs. And over those 100 devices, it works out over the device as a service platform for just over $1.25 a day. So that in its own shows and highlights that, look, you might perceive workstations to be expensive, but when put into the right context, put through the right platform, device as a service, they are very affordable. But the number in the top right-hand corner was the shocking one. That based on that estate of 100 devices, standard repair times and costs over a life cycle of that platform, using our TrueScale device as a service platform, that you can significantly save your organization money based on productivity, less downtime, more output. So I welcome everybody. Go to the calculator, put in the numbers that you think are a best reference for your organization, and then challenge us to see how much money we can save you by implementing the right technology from AMD, the ThinkPad P series mobile workstations from Lenovo, because ultimately these can help save you money. And what we'd like to do is offer you that test drive. So if you found this information to be interesting, if you want to receive more information or maybe to book your own private test drive, scan the QR code, contact your Lenovo reseller or your own Lenovo sales rep, and we can make that happen for you. You can touch, you can look, you can feel, you can see how one of these new heterogeneous AMD Ryzen Pro 300 devices can hopefully revolutionize your workflow. And you can see that the examples on this slides and the webinar today can then hopefully solve some of the challenges that you see today. Hopefully you help you build more profitable and a more productive organization for the future.